Hey everyone, welcome back. My name is Aaron.
And I'm Anna, and today's big idea is God speaks to us in different ways.
Now Anna, if I remember correctly, you had a neat experience where God actually spoke to you. Do you mind sharing?
Absolutely. There was a time in life where I needed to know and understand God's love, and He chose to show me a picture of two eyes with fire burning in them that represented His love for me. Now, what's neat about that is He knew I was a creative being, and that telling me words wasn't really going to cut it, that I needed to touch and feel and experience, and He did that with that picture.
That's cool that God spoke to you in a personalized way, so I guess you really got it.
Absolutely.
Let's check out this week's God story, guys.
So Moses was taking care of the sheep, and the sheep were wandering, and they ended up at the Mount... Try that again. Hey everyone, I'm Karmyn. It's great to be with you. Have you ever noticed that we talk to different people in different ways? Like for you, for example, maybe when you're talking to your teacher, you make sure not to shout and you put up your hand. Or when I'm talking to my friend who's learning English, I make sure to point at the things I'm talking about or speak slowly and clearly so they can understand. We all do it. But this actually leads me to today's big idea. God speaks to us in different ways. We've been learning all about Moses. Moses grew up and got curious about the Hebrews, his people, so he went off to find out what they were like. Let's read what happens next. After a long time, the king of Egypt died. The people of Israel groaned because they were slaves. They also cried out to God. Their cry for help went up to him. God heard their groans. He remembered his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. So God looked on the Israelites with concern for them. At this time, Moses was taking care of his father-in-law's sheep. His father-in-law's name was Reuel, but we're told he was also called Jethro. So Moses was taking care of his sheep, and his sheep wandered, and they ended up at Mount Horeb, also called the Mountain of God. Then something really cool happened. Let's read it. There, the angel of the Lord appeared to him from inside a burning bush. Moses saw that the bush was on fire, but it didn't burn up. So Moses thought, I'll go over and see this strange sight. Why doesn't the bush burn up? The Lord saw that Moses had gone over to look. So God spoke to him from inside the bush. He called out, Moses, Moses, here I am, Moses said. Whoa, isn't that so cool? God spoke to Moses through a burning bush. It's so neat that God knew how to get Moses' attention. Don't come any closer, God said. Take off your sandals. The place you are standing on is holy ground. He continued, I am the God of your father. I am the God of Abraham. I am the God of Isaac, and I am the God of Jacob. When Moses heard that, he turned his face away. He was afraid to look at God. God was clearly speaking to Moses through the burning bush, and God told Moses that he knew his people were suffering in Egypt, and he wanted Moses to get them out of that land. God told him he wanted to bring his people into a good land. God told Moses that he was sending him to Pharaoh. Moses was shocked and said, Who am I that I should go to Pharaoh? God told him that he would be with him and that he would give him a sign. Moses also asked, what should he tell the Hebrew people about who sent him? Let's see what God said. God said to Moses, I am who I am. Here is what you must say to the Israelites. Tell them, I am has sent me to you. God also said to Moses, say to the Israelites, the Lord is the God of your fathers. He has sent me to you. He is the God of Abraham, he is the God of Isaac, and he is the God of Jacob. My name will always be the Lord. Call me this name for all time to come. So then God told Moses that after he speaks with the Israelites, he and the elders of the Israelites need to go to Pharaoh and ask him if they can take a 3-day journey in the desert to offer sacrifices to God. God told him that Pharaoh wouldn't let that happen, and after he denied them, God would send amazing signs to get Pharaoh's attention, and then Pharaoh would let them. Moses was still nervous about talking to the Israelites because remember, he didn't grow up with them. They kind of saw him as an outsider. So God said to Moses, what's in your hand? And Moses replied, a walking stick. And God said, throw it on the ground. And when Moses did, it turned into a snake. And when Moses saw this, he ran away. And I would too. But God said, grab it by the tail. And when Moses did, it turned back into a walking stick. Whoa. But God knows that people can be stubborn, and so he gave Moses another sign. He told Moses to stick his hand inside his coat, and when Moses did that and pulled it out, his hand was white as snow, covered with a skin disease. But then, when Moses put his hand back in his coat and pulled it out again, it was back to normal. God gave Moses one more sign, in case the people still didn't believe him. He told Moses, go to the Nile River and scoop out some water and pour it on the ground. And when he did this, it turned to blood. Okay, so God had given Moses 3 amazing signs, and Moses was still nervous. And so he said to God, but God, I'm not a good speaker. God said, I will help you speak. I will tell you what to say. But Moses, he still said, Lord, please send someone else. But God was still determined to have Moses go. So he said his brother Aaron could go with him to help him speak. God would still be the one to tell them what to say though. So off Moses went, back to Egypt. Man, Moses sure was stubborn, wasn't he? God was speaking to him through a burning bush, and he still worried and doubted. But you know what? Truthfully, we'd probably be the same way. And it's important to remember that God speaks to us in different ways too. Sometimes through a quiet voice inside of us, through other Christ followers, through a verse in the Bible, through conversations, through different experiences. And though God will probably never speak to you or I through a burning bush, God does speak to us. And it's important to take the time and listen, because God speaks to us in different ways. Well, my friends, it was so great to be together. We'll see you soon.
Okay, so I know that God speaks to people in different ways, but Aaron, for real, what would you do if you had a bush, a burning bush, start talking to you?
Honestly, I have absolutely no idea, other than I'm paying attention. I know God speaks to different people in different ways. That is for sure not a way that he normally speaks to me, so I'm tuning into what's being said.
Absolutely. We have a really cool story to share with you. Why don't we watch what Andy's doing and see how God speaks to him in interesting ways?
Science just gives me an opportunity to discover new and exciting things that I've never got to know before. Most of the time, experiments fail or you just have issues with them. But when they go well, it's just like one of the greatest feelings you can have. Growing up, I would often feel that I had to be the best. This often caused me to have a lot of anxiety and just to belittle myself and call myself names if something didn't go right. So eventually my anxiety got really bad, started having panic attacks, and it got to the point where I actually ended up in the hospital. And one night in the hospital, as I was calling out to God, where are you in this moment? And I heard a voice just say, be still and know that I'm God. And that's when I knew that God was with me. Through the years, I've found that God speaks to me in many different ways, such as people, music, nature, and science. I really enjoy science, and it's given me great opportunities to share it with other people. And one of the ways I do that is I tutor high school students in a low-income neighborhood. And I get the opportunity to share my scientific knowledge and to get them excited about science. A couple years ago, I found out that smoking meat is a great opportunity to spend time with neighbors and just share food with them. I started smoking different types of meats, such as briskets, pulled porks, and that type of thing. I also help out with a kids' breakfast we do every Wednesday, and I also help plan a community dinner with my church, where we feed about 150 people once a month and just give them an opportunity to sit and just enjoy a nice meal and not have to worry about the things happening around them. Many times when I'm spending time with people and friends and family and neighbors, I often get the same message from them. And one of those messages that I got was Jeremiah 29, which is, for I know the plans that I have for you. And that just was a reminder that God does have a plan for my life. Sometimes I still struggle with anxiety, but I found that it's only temporary, and so I bring it to God and I sing and I pray, and that often calms me down. So whether we look for God in the big spectacular such as the universe or the small things such as a tiny cell, God speaks to us in different ways, and we just have to learn to listen.
How cool was that? I love seeing the science experiments, and that meat, oh, it had me so hungry.
Yeah, I had a feeling that he'd like that part. Do you know what my favorite part was? Just being able to see how God spoke to Andy in a way that resonated with him.
Yeah, it's so cool that God is not limited to speaking just English or French or Spanish or even Elvish, but that God speaks to us in different ways through nature, through visions, through science, whatever it is, God speaks to us in a way that we can get it.
Awesome, that's amazing. Why don't we break into our small groups and see what this looks like in our lives?